I'm racing. Well, here it's fine if you got the time and the time to get yourself in. And here is time almost every night. But now I might be mistaken.
Okay, today we're going to talk about making Belgian candy syrup. If you do a lot of Belgian beers, obviously you know that there's pretty good cost involved with picking up Belgian candy syrup, especially if you're doing a large batch, a 10-gallon batch. You know, maybe a 5-gallon batch only calls for 2.5 pounds, and at $8 or $10 a pound, that's really not too bad. When you start getting into larger batches, now you're looking at upwards of $50 just in your candy syrup to make a batch. And that's starting to get pretty expensive. So what we're going to do today is try to show you a way to really cut that expense and make some really good Belgian candy syrup in the process. The first thing you're going to need to probably pick up, I didn't have it sitting around, perhaps you do, is going to be this pickling lime. Inexpensive, about $4 a bag, and a bag should last you almost forever. I picked it up at the local grocery store. It'll usually be found in with the canning supplies. The next thing you'll need is 1 cup of wort. That's going to provide us with the proteins that we need in order to get the flavors that we're looking for out of the candy syrup. Plain sugar really doesn't have any proteins, doesn't have any amino acids, and we really need those to get our reactions going and to develop the flavors that we're looking for. Here we have just some plain water. We're going to use this during the cooking process to cool down the candy syrup as it's cooking, because we want to maintain certain temperature ranges throughout the process. Here we have a little over 2 pounds of sugar. I'm shooting to have about 2.5 pounds of candy syrup at the end of this process. Here we have just a tall cup with some water in it. You want to make sure that's good and cold, because we're going to take a spoon and sample some of our candy syrup as it's cooking. You'll take some out, drop it in, it'll cool as it drops to the bottom, and then you'll be able to retrieve it out of there and taste it as the process goes along, so that you can stop when you get to the flavors that you're really looking for. Little spatula to mix as we're cooking. Here we have just an inexpensive candy thermometer. You can pick these up at the grocery store, any kind of kitchen store. They're only a couple of bucks if you don't have one. And just a measuring spoon. We're going to use this for our plain water to drizzle it in as we're cooking to keep our temperatures in the right scale. Okay, the next thing we're going to want to do, we're going to take our measuring cup, put about a cup of water in here, and we're going to add 20 grams of our pickling lime. I'm going to add a word of caution at this point about the pickling lime. You want to be careful when you mix it up. It creates a very alkaline solution, which is caustic. It can cause skin burns. You want to be really careful. Don't rub your eyes or anything after you've handled it until you've washed your hands off. Some people actually use food grade lye. I went with the pickling lime mainly because it's a lot easier to find. You can usually find it on the shelf in the grocery store. Food grade lye can be a little harder to come by, and the lime isn't quite as caustic as the food grade lye, so I decided to go that route. Okay, time to start cooking here. What we've done is taken the 1 cup of wort, put it in our saucepan. This is a non-stick saucepan. You don't have to use non-stick. It's a good idea. We're going to be cooking sugars and cooking them for a long period of time, so it can get pretty messy, pretty baked on. So if you have a non-stick pan, that's not the worst idea. If you don't, not a deal breaker. You can use any kind of pan. Just be ready for some scrubbing when you're done. We have our candy thermometer. We're going to bring this up to just below boiling before we add our sugar. You just want to make sure that everything because this is wort as we're heating it, just stir it every once in a while just to make sure nothing's sticking to the bottom. There are some proteins, a little bit of sediment in that wort. We don't want that getting burned right off the bat. Okay, here we have our worts just about getting ready to boil. So we're going to take our sugar, just slowly add that in, stirring as we go. You want to make sure to keep stirring this, and we're going to keep the heat pretty low and stir till this is all dissolved. We don't want to actually bring it up to a boil till all the grains and the sugar are dissolved. That way we keep our solution from burning. Okay, here we have our sugar and wort mixture. I've kept it at about 150 degrees just till it dissolves really well. Here you can see it's a lot clearer than it was initially. Can't feel any grains of sugar still left in it. So now we can start ramping up the heat a little bit and start bringing it up to a boil. Okay, you can see here we just started our boil. Because of having the wort in there, as home brewers we all know about boil overs, so you want to keep stirring this constantly because we want to prevent any boil overs. Let's see here, it's getting pretty close, so I'll turn the heat down. We want to let that get up to between 260 and 275 degrees. This is where inversion is going to take place. What inversion is doing is taking the sucrose, which is what our cane sugar is comprised of. It's a complex molecule, and it's breaking it down into glucose and fructose. Those are much simpler sugars and are going to be a lot easier for our yeast to eat and convert into the beer that we all know and love. Okay, you can see here I switched up pots because I was getting a little too close to my boil over. Now we're at 260 degrees, so we're going to set our timer, and from this point we're going to go for 30 minutes at between 260 and 275. This is where our water will come into play. If it starts getting a little bit warm, just take a little bit of our water, we'll just drizzle it in there, and that'll bring the temperature back down. These candi thermometers don't react real quickly, so don't add too much at a time. Just put a little in and give it a minute and see what the temperature comes down to. Usually a tablespoon of room temperature water will bring it down about 4 or 5 degrees. So you don't want to get too carried away with adding too much because we want to keep it up at this temperature for our inversion to take place. Okay, I'm going to try to get a picture of this. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. But if you can see the thermometer there, there's a line on there that says hard ball. It's just above the 250 degree mark. That is right at 260 degrees, and that's pretty much right where we want to have our temperature at. So if you have one of this type of candi thermometer, just keep it right at that hard ball 260 degree line for 30 minutes. Okay, now here we're just about 20 minutes into our inversion, and here's where our cup of water and our spoon will come in. Now I'm just going to use a spatula, you can use a spoon. We're just going to take our cup of water and just drip a little bit into there. Now we take the spoon, we'll go in, retrieve that out of there. And you can see that after almost a half an hour of cooking, we have almost no color. It's just a clear sugar syrup that's hardened because of the cold water. Really isn't anything going on there, no real flavors. There's a little bit of caramel, a little bit of toffee coming out, but really nothing much in the way of flavors going on here. And the next step is where we're going to really produce our flavors. Okay, now we have our mixture up at 275. This is where we're going to add our lime, and we should see some reactions start off pretty quick. You can see that there's definitely some color in there. We're starting to get a little bit of caramelization. You know, we still want to be careful. We don't want to burn it, so we want to keep checking it. You'll see this is pretty thick at this point. This is kind of where you want it to be when we add our lime. So now we're going to take our lime mixture, and as we're stirring, just start adding that in. And I'm not going to put it all in. I'm going to hold a little back because I don't want to put too much in. Too much lime, you can end up getting kind of a mineral flavor in your mix. So now we're just going to stir that up real good. We're going to add just a little bit of water to kind of thin this out a little bit. It's getting a little bit on the thick side, so we're going to thin it down. We don't want to start burning it. We want to keep our syrup. Now this is where you want to be careful because there'll be a lot of hot steam coming out of this 275 degree sugar. So now we're going to let that go for a couple minutes. You can see already from the lime we've gotten a lot darker consistency going. That's our melanoidin reactions starting, and that's what's really going to give us our fruit flavors, our roasty flavors, coffees, chocolates, all the flavors that we're looking for in our final product. Okay, here you can see now we're starting to get a really nice deep caramel color. I'm going to add a little bit more lime, and just to show you how quick this reaction happens once it gets going, I'm just going to add a little bit. And you can see there how dark that gets right away. And that's the reactions that we're looking for. We're looking for those chocolate notes and the dark fruit notes to come out. And that's what we should be getting. And just a little bit more. And look how quick that turns into a nice deep dark color. And this is after 15 minutes after we did the initial lime addition, and it's really brought out a lot of those almost reddish brown hues. Really starting to get a lot of dark fruits, getting chocolates, really starting to come together. What I'm going to do now is we'll ramp this up to about 290 degrees because I want to get a little bit more chocolate, a little bit more roasty flavor in it. I do want to maintain some of those fruit flavors, so I'm not going to get too carried away. I'm going to test it often to see where we're at. But right now, color-wise, this is really looking good and right about where I want to be. Just a nice dark, almost maroon hue to that. Okay, here in this step, what I'm doing is I'm warming it. I've transferred it back into my 2-quart saucepan, and I'm warming it up. You can see nice syrup, nice dark syrup underneath. What I've done was added some water to get it back to a nice syrup consistency, and I'm warming it up just a little bit, not to boiling, but just to dissolve the sugars back in. And you'll see this, what kind of looks like hot break. on the top. What we want to do is remove that, because that contains a lot of the solids and a lot of the alkaline flavors from adding the lime to this. So as we warm this, you'll see it start to come to the top. We just want to take that and get as much of that out of there as we can to reduce those off flavors. Alright, here's our finished candy syrup. Came out really nice. It's a nice deep amber color. Has all the flavors we were looking for. It's super easy to do. If I can do it, anybody can do it. So next time you're thinking about brewing up something that needs candy sugar in it or candy syrup in it, don't hesitate. Go out, grab a couple pounds of sugar, a little bit of time on the stove, and make up your own. Hope you enjoyed the video. And remember, get out there and get brewing.
When you gonna get this kitchen clean?
She lives on the block. She kinda funky with a pink and black sock. She like to boogie. She do the tube steak boogie. Well, now boogie woogie, baby. Boogie woogie all night long. She lives on the hill. She won't do it, but her sister will when she boogie. She do the tube snake boogie. Well, now boogie, little baby, boogie woogie all night long. Blow your top, blow your top, blow your top.
Bad dog.